Have you ever looked at your own life and not recognized it? Have you ever stared at the person lying next to you in bed and seen a complete stranger? That was me. My name is Lena, and for 5 years, I lived in a beautiful, perfect-looking cage. The bars were made of gold, polished so brightly that for a long, long time, I was completely blind to them. I was blind to everything, until the day the polish wore off, and I saw the rust, the decay, and the cruel, cold truth underneath. It all started with a man named Julian. Julian Thorne. Doesn't the name just sound successful? Powerful. He was the kind of man who entered a room and the air changed. He was a hurricane of charisma and ambition, and when he set his sights on me, a simple girl from a small town with big dreams, I was swept away. Completely and utterly. I was an artist, living in a tiny studio apartment, splattering my passion onto canvases that rarely sold. He was a real estate mogul, building empires out of steel and glass. We met at a gallery showing my work was being featured, a tiny piece in a collective exhibit. He didn't come for me. He came for a client. But he saw my painting, a chaotic splash of midnight blue and fiery orange called Unexpected Storm. And then, he saw me. His approach wasn't smooth. It was intense. He stood in front of my painting for 10 solid minutes, not saying a word. Then he turned to me, his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, locking onto mine. "It's not a storm," he said, his voice low. "It's a battle. The moment right before everything shatters." He saw the story in my chaos. No one had ever done that before. He didn't see a pretty picture, he saw my soul. And just like that, I was his. The courtship was a fairy tale. Private jets to Paris for dinner. Roses that filled my entire apartment. Jewels that felt cold against my skin compared to the warmth of his attention. He made me feel seen, cherished. He told me I was his muse, the missing piece he never knew he needed. He built a world for us, a stunning penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the entire city. He said, "Lena, from up here, we can see everything. We can have everything." And I believed him. I gave up my tiny studio. I packed away my paints, telling myself I'd start again soon, in the beautiful, north-facing light of our new home. But Julian's world was a demanding one. There were galas, charity events, business dinners. My art became a hobby, then a memory. My friends from my old life slowly faded away, they didn't fit in Julian's polished universe. I became Lena Thorne, the elegant, silent partner. The accessory. But love makes you justify things, doesn't it? The slow erosion of your own identity feels like a necessary sacrifice. You tell yourself it's for the greater good, for the beautiful future you're building. I loved him. I loved the life we had. Or at least, I loved the life I thought we had. Because the first crack in that beautiful, gilded cage, was his mother. Eleanor Thorne. If Julian was a hurricane, Eleanor was a glacier. Ancient, immovable, and cold enough to freeze your soul with a single look. She was old money, from a family whose name was etched into the foundations of the city. To her, Julian's success was simply him taking his rightful place. And I was a smudge on the family portrait. A splash of messy paint on her pristine, white canvas. From the very first meeting, it was a war. A cold, polite, devastating war. We'd have Sunday dinners at her mansion, a cavernous, silent place where the ticking of a grandfather clock sounded like a judge's gavel. She would critique everything. The way I held my fork. The modest, off-the-rack dress I wore before Julian started buying my entire wardrobe. My quaint family background. "Lena, dear," she'd say, her voice like silk wrapped around a knife. "Your parents are farmers, is it? How wonderfully rustic." The word rustic in her mouth sounded like filthy. And Julian? He would just sit there. He'd shrug it off later, in the car. "That's just Mom, Lena. Don't be so sensitive. She's from a different time." He'd squeeze my hand. "She'll come around." But she never came around. The comments became sharper, more personal. She'd ask, in her sweetly poisonous way, when we were going to have children, then muse about the importance of good breeding and legacy. She'd look directly at me and talk about how Julian's first serious girlfriend, Cassandra, was from the Vandermeer family, and how lovely it was when two powerful dynasties could unite. Every dinner was a fresh battlefield, and I was always losing. I started dreading them. I'd feel physically sick every Sunday morning. My hands would shake. I began to change myself, trying to become the woman she might approve of. I studied etiquette books. I practiced my elocution. I tried to make my voice sound less common. I was sanding down my own edges, trying to fit into a thorn-shaped box. One night, after a particularly brutal dinner where she'd mocked a charity project I was passionate about, I broke down in the car. Julian, she hates me. She will always hate me. Why do we have to keep doing this? He sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. Lena, she's my mother. This is my family. You need to be stronger. You need to learn to handle her. For us. For us. Those two words were his ultimate weapon. They kept me silent. They kept me compliant. I was fighting for us, and if that meant enduring his mother's venom, then that's what I had to do. I told myself his neutrality was a form of support. He wasn't picking her side, he was just staying out of it. He was the peacekeeper. Oh, how foolish I was. How desperately, tragically foolish. Because neutrality in the face of cruelty isn't neutrality at all. It's permission. And the night everything shattered was the night of our 5th anniversary party. The night I learned the true price of my gilded cage. The Grand Meridian Ballroom was glittering. 1,000 crystal shards in the chandeliers reflected 1,000 smiling, wealthy faces. This was Julian's world, and for tonight, I was its queen. I wore a custom-made gown of deep emerald green, a color Julian said brought out the fire in my eyes. For the first time in months, I felt beautiful. I felt confident. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally becoming Lena Thorne. The party was in full swing. Laughter, clinking glasses, the soft murmur of million-dollar deals being whispered in corners. I was circulating, playing my part, when I saw them. Julian and Eleanor, standing by the grand piano, their heads close together. They weren't smiling. They were having one of their intense, quiet conversations. A knot tightened in my stomach. I decided to be brave. For us. I took a deep breath, fixed a smile on my face, and walked over, my heart hammering against my ribs. An absolute disaster, Julian, I heard Eleanor hiss as I approached. I've just heard from Charles. The deal is falling apart because of her. I stopped cold. Her? Who was her? Julian's face was a mask of strained patience. Mother, not now. Not here. When, then, she snapped, her voice low but razor-sharp. When your little artist has completely run your reputation into the ground. That ridiculous children's hospital charity she's so attached to. The board sees it as a frivolous distraction. They're questioning your judgment. Your judgment. Because you can't control your own wife's embarrassing hobbies. The air left my lungs. My hobby. The charity that had become my lifeline, my one piece of identity outside of being Mrs. Thorne. It was the one project that felt like me. And she was calling it an embarrassment. I stepped forward, my voice trembling slightly. Eleanor. Julian. Is everything all right? They both turned. Eleanor's eyes swept over me, from my carefully styled hair to my emerald gown, with pure, undiluted contempt. She didn't even acknowledge my question. She looked back at Julian, a cruel, mocking smile playing on her lips. Look at her, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. Playing dress-up. Thinking she's one of us. She's a simple, little nobody from a dirt-poor family, Julian. She has no name, no class, no connections. She's a social climber with a pretty face, and she's going to be the reason you lose everything. She is, and always will be, a worthless gold digger. The words hit me like physical blows. Worthless. Gold digger. Nobody. They echoed in the silent space where my confidence had been just moments before. I stood there, frozen, the emerald gown feeling like a ridiculous costume. I felt the eyes of the party on me. I felt naked. Humiliated. Destroyed. My eyes, brimming with tears, Found Julian's. This was it. This was the line. After all the subtle digs, the polite insults, this was a direct, brutal attack. He would defend me now. He had to. He would tell his mother to stop. He would put his arm around me and tell her she'd gone too far. He looked at me. He looked at his mother. And then, he laughed. It wasn't a loud, booming laugh. It was a soft, complicit chuckle. A shake of his head, as if his mother had just told a slightly off-color joke. "Oh, Mother," he said, his voice laced with amusement. "You're always so dramatic." That chuckle, that was the sound of my world breaking. The sound of 5 years of love, sacrifice, and belief shattering into a million tiny, irreparable pieces. The man I loved, the man I had built my life around, had just laughed while his mother called me a worthless gold digger in front of the entire city. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. The tears that were threatening to fall, they froze solid in my eyes. I turned around, and I walked away. I walked through the crowd of staring, pitying faces, through the ballroom, out into the cool night air. I didn't run. I walked with a stillness that came from a place deep inside me I never knew existed. A place that had just turned to ice. He laughed. He actually laughed. And in that moment, something in me broke, and something else was born. Section 4, The Cold Awakening. I didn't go home. I couldn't. That penthouse wasn't my home, it was a museum of my own foolishness. I checked into a hotel, a simple, anonymous room with beige walls and no memories. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my emerald gown, and I stared at my reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back at me wasn't Lena Thorne. She wasn't even the artist Lena I used to be. She was a stranger. A hollowed-out shell. But in her eyes, there was a new, cold fire. The shock began to melt away, and in its place came a clarity so sharp it was painful. I saw everything with brutal, unforgiving honesty. The isolation from my friends. The abandonment of my art. The constant, slow erosion of my spirit. Julian hadn't just been neutral, he had been complicit. He had allowed his mother to systematically dismantle me, piece by piece, because it was easier than confronting her. Because a wife who was broken, who had no support system, who had no identity of her own, was a wife who was easier to control. The gold digger comment was the most ironic part. In the beginning, I had my own small income from the few paintings I sold. Julian had insisted I close my bank account. "It's simpler, darling," he'd said. "We're one now. My money is our money." He gave me a black credit card with no limit. I never saw a bank statement. I never signed a check. I was financially invisible. If I was a gold digger, I was a terribly incompetent one. The sun rose, casting a pale, judgmental light into the room. My phone was buzzing incessantly. Julian. Dozens of missed calls, text messages. "Lena, where are you? You're causing a scene. Come home. We can talk about this. You know how Mother gets. You're overreacting. Overreacting. Causing a scene." The audacity of it stole my breath. He wasn't apologizing. He was managing a problem. He was trying to put the genie back in the bottle, to smooth over the crack I'd made in his perfect world. I didn't reply to a single message. I powered off the phone. The silence was powerful. For the first time in 5 years, there was no one to answer to. No performance to give. It was just me, and the cold, hard truth. And with that truth came a single, resolute thought. A thought that was calm, and clear, and absolute. This was not over. He had laughed. He had broken me in the most public way imaginable. He had taken everything from me, my friends, my passion, my dignity. It was time to take something back. I stood up, walked to the hotel desk, and picked up the landline phone. I dialed a number I hadn't dialed in years. The number of the one person who had seen the beginning of my relationship with Julian and had warned me, gently, that moving too fast was dangerous. The one person I had pushed away when she expressed doubts. My old friend, Sarah. Who was now one of the most formidable corporate lawyers in the state. The phone rang once, twice. "Sarah. It's Lena," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I need your help." And I need you to listen. Section 5. The first move. Meeting Sarah was like stepping into a time machine. We met in a quiet corner of a cafe far from my old haunts. She looked the same, sharp, intelligent eyes, a no-nonsense haircut. But the warmth in her smile was now tempered with a professional caution. "Lena," she said, her voice soft. "My God. Are you okay?" I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I laid it all out. The anniversary party. The insult. The laugh. The 5 years of slow-burn emotional destruction. The financial control. The isolation. I showed her the text messages from Julian, each one a perfect example of gaslighting and dismissal. Sarah listened, her face growing grimmer with every word. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment, stirring her coffee. "Legally," she began, her tone shifting to that of a strategist, "this is complicated. You have no prenup, which is good. But you also have no separate assets. No income. You've been financially dependent on him for 5 years. In the eyes of the law, that can be a vulnerability. He can claim you contributed nothing to the marriage." I felt a flicker of panic. "So, I have nothing?" A slow, sly smile spread across Sarah's face. "Oh, no, Lena. You have everything. You just don't know it yet. He thinks you're a meek, helpless little artist he can shove back into her box. He has no idea who you've just become. Our first move isn't to file for divorce." "Not yet. Then what is it?" I asked. "Information," she said, her eyes glinting. "Power, in a situation like this, is knowledge. We need to know everything. Everything. We need to turn your greatest weakness, your financial ignorance, into your greatest strength. You need to become the expert on Julian Thorne." She laid out the plan. Phase 1. The reconnaissance. I was to go back to the penthouse. I was to act contrite, shaken. I was to tell Julian I had overreacted, that I was sorry for causing a scene. It made my skin crawl, but I understood. I had to get back inside the castle walls to learn its secrets. "While you're in there," Sarah instructed, "you are a ghost. You listen. You observe. You find every financial document, every bank statement, every business contract you can get your hands on. You take pictures of everything. You note down every password you see him type. You are no longer his wife. You are an auditor. An investigator." That afternoon, I walked back into the penthouse. Julian was there, pacing. He looked relieved when he saw me. "Lena, thank God. I've been worried sick." I forced my shoulders to slump. I made my eyes look tired and red-rimmed. "I'm sorry, Julian," I whispered, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. I was just so humiliated. I didn't know what to do. He pulled me into a hug. It felt like being embraced by a statue. "It's okay, darling. It's over now. Mother can be harsh. But she loves me, and she just wants what's best for me. For us." I nodded against his chest, saying nothing. What's best for him? It had always been about what was best for him. And so, the performance began. I was the perfect, chastened wife. I made his favorite meals. I asked about his day. And all the while, my eyes were scanning. My ears were listening. When he was in his home office, on the phone, I'd stand silently outside the door, my phone's voice memo app recording every word. I started small. I found a stack of old bank statements in a drawer he'd told me was just boring tax stuff. I photographed every page. I found the login for his personal laptop scribbled on a notepad. When he was in the shower, I accessed it, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I found files. So many files. Shell companies with strange names. Offshore account references. Transactions that made no sense. I was no financial expert, but even I could see it. The numbers didn't add up. The Julian Thorne presented to the world, the successful, powerful mogul, and the financial reality I was uncovering, they were two different people. The man was a house of cards, and I was about to summon a hurricane. For weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the docile Lena, pouring coffee and nodding along to Julian's stories. By night, I was a shadow, a digital sleuth, sending encrypted files to Sarah. The more I uncovered, the colder I became. The love I had once felt was now a distant, foolish memory, replaced by a simmering, righteous anger. Sarah's team of forensic accountants went to work on the documents. And what they found was breathtaking. Julian's empire wasn't just built on steel and glass. It was built on sand, lies, and debt, and deception. He was leveraged to the hilt. The beautiful penthouse, heavily mortgaged. The private jet, leased. The frivolous charity I loved, the children's hospital. He had been quietly siphoning funds from it to prop up his failing business ventures. The irony was so thick I could taste it. His mother had accused me of being a gold digger, of ruining his reputation, while her precious son was embezzling from a children's charity to keep his head above water. He was using my name, my signature on various charity board documents he'd asked me to sign over the years, to help cover his tracks. He was setting me up to take the fall. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place one evening. Julian was stressed, more so than usual. He was drinking heavily. I brought him a cup of tea, playing the part of the concerned wife. "It's just, the investors, Lena," he slurred. "They're getting nervous. If the Somerset deal falls through, it's all over." The Somerset deal was the one his mother had mentioned at the party. "I'm sure it will be fine, darling," I said softly, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You're Julian Thorne. You've never failed." He looked up at me, his eyes glassy. "You don't understand. My mother, she's invested everything. Her trust fund, her inheritance, everything is tied up in my company. If I go down, she goes down with me." A cold, sharp thrill shot through me. It was all connected. Eleanor's viciousness wasn't just about class or snobbery. It was about survival. She saw me as a threat because my charity was a liability, but more than that, she was terrified. Her entire fortune, her precious legacy, was dependent on her son's crumbling house of cards. She wasn't just a cruel mother-in-law, she was a desperate investor trying to protect her assets, and I was the easiest person to blame. I had it. I had the whole, ugly picture. Not just a story of a mama's boy and a nasty mother-in-law. This was a story of fraud. Of embezzlement. Of a man so desperate to maintain an image that he would destroy anyone in his path, including the woman who loved him. I went to my closet, to a hidden panel where I kept my old, powered-off phone. I turned it on and sent a single, prearranged message to Sarah. "I have it all. The foundation, the transfers, everything. And I know why. It's time." Her reply was instantaneous. "Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Be ready." The next morning, I dressed carefully. I didn't put on one of the elegant, expensive dresses Julian had bought me. I put on a simple, sharp, black pantsuit I had secretly purchased. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, yes, but a powerful one. She was Lena. Not the artist. Not the wife. Just Lena. And she was ready for war. Julian was at the breakfast table, reading the financial news on his tablet. He barely looked up. "Big day today, darling. The Somerset deal closing. Finally, some good news." I poured myself a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter. "Yes," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I know all about the Somerset deal, Julian." He looked up, surprised by my tone. "What?" "I know all about a lot of things," I continued, taking a slow sip of coffee. "The Emerald Holdings Shell Company. The transfers from the Bright Futures Children's Foundation. Your mother's entire fortune being leveraged against your failing flagship project. I know it all." The color drained from his face. His tablet clattered onto the marble tabletop. "Lena, what are you talking about? Who have you been talking to?" I smiled, a small, cold smile. "I've been talking to my lawyer, Julian. We've been having some fascinating conversations." The look on his face, it was a beautiful, terrible thing. It was the look of a man watching his entire world, his carefully constructed lie of a life, implode right in front of him. The game was over. The revenge had begun. What followed was a whirlwind of quiet, legal precision. While Julian spluttered and raged, I simply walked out of the penthouse. This time, for good. I moved into a secure apartment Sarah had arranged. The battle was no longer in the shadows, it was in boardrooms and court filings. We didn't go public. Not yet. Sarah's strategy was far more elegant, far more devastating. She went directly to Julian's board of directors and his most prominent investors. She presented them with a carefully curated package of evidence: the embezzlement from the charity, the fraudulent misrepresentation of company assets, the personal financial jeopardy Julian had placed them all in. The effect was instantaneous. It was like setting a bomb in the very foundation of his company. The Somerset deal collapsed. The investors pulled out. The board, in a panic, voted to remove Julian as CEO to save whatever was left of the company, launching an internal investigation. Within a week, Julian Thorne was finished. His company was in free fall, headed for bankruptcy. The public facade was still there, but behind the scenes, the empire had fallen. But the true masterpiece of the plan was for Eleanor. I asked Sarah for one more thing. A private meeting. Just me and Eleanor Thorne. Sarah arranged it at a neutral location, a quiet, private dining room in a club she belonged to. I arrived first. I stood by the window, wearing my simple black suit, feeling a calm I hadn't felt in years. When Eleanor entered, she was still the glacier. Dressed in a severe navy blue dress, her pearls perfect, her face a mask of cold fury. "This is an outrage," she began, not even bothering with a greeting. "How dare you? You pathetic, ungrateful little." "Sit down, Eleanor," I said, my voice cutting through hers, quiet but absolute. She was so shocked by my tone that she actually stopped talking and sat a day. "I'm not here to gloat," I said, turning to face her. "I'm here to give you a choice." "A choice," she spat. "You have nothing to offer me." "Oh, but I do," I said, walking slowly to the table. "I have the evidence of your son's crimes. The embezzlement from the children's hospital. The fraud. I have it all. And right now, my lawyer is on the phone with the district attorney's office. I can hang up, and we can settle this mess quietly in divorce court, with you losing your money but keeping your son out of prison. Or, I can let that call continue, and Julian will be facing a very long list of felony charges." Her face went pale. The glacier was cracking. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I whispered, leaning forward, my hands on the table. "You called me a gold digger. You said I had no class, no name. But you were the one who raised a criminal. You were the one who was so desperate to hold on to your money and your status that you turned a blind eye to his corruption. You laughed while he broke me. Now, the world is about to laugh while it breaks him. And you." I could see the calculations going on behind her eyes. The terror. The realization that she had lost. Completely and utterly. "What do you want?" she finally asked, her voice a broken whisper. "I want you to admit it," I said. "I want you to look me in the eye and tell me what I am." She stared at me, her jaw clenched. The silence stretched. I didn't blink. Finally, she looked down at her hands. "You are not a gold digger." Louder. She took a shuddering breath. "You are not a gold digger. My son, he betrayed you. He used you. And I allowed it. I encouraged it." The words seemed to physically pain her. I was wrong. I stood up straight. The admission was hollow, but it was enough. It was the truth. "The divorce settlement will be generous," I said, walking toward the door. "You will sign it without a fight. You will never speak my name again. And you will live the rest of your life knowing that the worthless nobody you looked down on was the one who showed you both more mercy than you ever showed me." I left her there, in that silent room, a queen dethroned, her kingdom of lies turned to dust around her. Section 8, a canvas of my own. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. It was the quietest, most seismic event of my life. The settlement was, as promised, more than generous. It wasn't about the money. It was about restitution. It was an acknowledgement, in the only way the law could provide, of the 5 years of my life I had lost. I didn't take everything. I took what was fair. Enough to never have to worry again. Enough to be free. Julian's company declared bankruptcy. He was never criminally charged, I kept my word on that, but his reputation was destroyed. The mighty Julian Thorne became a cautionary tale in business circles. The last I heard, he and his mother had moved to a much smaller, much less glamorous city, living off the scraps of what was left of her fortune. The society pages that once adored them now ignored them. They had become nobody. As for me, I bought a small, sun-drenched studio by the sea. The first thing I unpacked was my old box of paints. The smell of turpentine and linseed oil was like coming home. I stood in front of a blank canvas, and for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. I didn't paint a storm or a battle. I painted the sunrise over the water. I painted the quiet, resilient beauty of a new beginning. My story isn't just a story of revenge. It's a story of awakening. I learned that the most dangerous prisons aren't the ones with physical bars, but the ones we build in our own minds, made of love and hope, and the desperate desire to be enough for someone else. I learned that when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Julian showed me he was a coward, hiding behind his mother's cruelty. Eleanor showed me she was a desperate woman whose love was conditional on maintaining her status. But most importantly, I learned who I was. I was not a victim. I was a survivor. I was not a gold digger. I was an artist. I was not weak. I was stronger than any Thorne could ever hope to be. He laughed when his mother insulted me. That laugh was the key that unlocked my cage. It was the sound of my freedom being born. So, if you are in a cage of your own, if you are being diminished, belittled, or broken by someone who claims to love you, remember my story. Find your key. It might be a laugh, a word, a look. And when you find it, don't cry. Don't scream. Call your lawyer. And then, paint yourself a new world.